During the Middle Ages, the great interregional travelers Xuanzang, Marco Polo, and Ibn Battuta began to explore and document foreign civilizations, helping to bring East and West together and sparking the age of exploration. Let's begin with Xuanzang. Born into a Confucian scholarly family around 600 CE, Xuanzang was educated in the classical Confucian style by his father. When his father died, however, Xuanzang's older brother, Qin Su, became the main influence on the child. Because of this, that he began to study at a monastery in Luoyang, where his brother was a Buddhist monk, and then in Sichuan, where the two moved to avoid political turmoil. However, the young scholar was troubled by the discrepancies and contradictions in the Buddhist text, which were often mistranslated and misinterpreted. To solve this problem, Xuanzang decided to travel to India and obtain original Buddhist scripture and to study and learn doctrine directly from the Indian teachings. Since foreign travels were forbidden at the time, Xuanzang set out in secrecy in 629 CE. Traveling alone through treacherous deserts and mountainous regions, and spending a month in the company of King Chu Wen Tai of Turfan, who only let him leave after he threatened to stage a hunger strike, Xuanzang reached India. In India, the scholar traveled to all the sacred sites associated with the Buddha, but spent most of his time at the Nalanda Monastery, a Buddhist center of learning. Studying under Abbot Sulabhadra, it was in the Nalanda Monastery that he perfected Sanskrit and Buddhist philosophy. While in India, news of the Chinese pilgrims spread and soon reached the great King Harsha of Assam. Harsha, a Buddhist advocate and throne similar to Ashoka, greatly aided Xuanzang's return to Chang'an. Upon his return in 645 CE, Xuanzang was welcomed by the Tang Emperor, who was greatly impressed by his accounts of foreign lands, and even offered the pilgrim a ministerial position in his court. Xuanzang, preferring to serve his religion respectfully, declined the generous offer, and spent the rest of his life transferring the 657 documents collected in India. While he died before he could complete this monumental task, he did translate 75 of these documents. Before his death in 664 CE, however, Xuanzang authored records of western regions of the Great Tang Dynasty, a detailed account of his travels and the places and things he encountered during them, translated the Tao Te Ching into Sanskrit, and sent it to India, and founded the Wei Shi, the consciousness-only school, in China.
Marco Polo was born in 1275 in Venice, Italy. He traveled extensively with his family, journeying from Europe to Asia from 1271 to 1295. He remained in China for 17 of those years. He wrote the book Il Million, describing his travels and experiences, and influenced later adventurers and merchants. Even though he was born to a wealthy Venetian merchant family, Marco Polo spent most of his life without parents. Polo's mother died when he was young, and his father and uncle Niccolo and Maffeo Polo were jewel merchants and were in Asia for much of his youth. Niccolo and Maffeo Polo joined a diplomatic mission to the court of Kublai Khan, the leader of the Mongols. In 1264, they returned to Europe with immediate plans to return to Khan's court. During their stay with Khan, he expressed his interest in Christianity and requested that they return with 100 priests and a collection of holy water. 2 years after returning home, Niccolo and Maffeo Polo set out for Asia again, but this time they brought Marco with them. They were only able to recruit 2 priests, both of which turned back home when they realized the difficult journey ahead. Their journey was very long and challenging. It consisted of deserts and mountains. However, after 4 years, they finally returned to China. In Marco's years in China, he learned 4 languages and was appointed to high posts in Khan's administration. As a result, Marco was sent to far-flung areas of Asia, never before explored by Europeans. Burma, India, Tibet, and other areas were among the places that Marco ventured to. At one point, Marco was the tax inspector in Yangzhou. After 17 years, the Polos decided it was time to return home. Their decision did not please Khan, who had grown to depend on them. In the end, he said that they could leave if they escorted a Mongol princess to Persia, where she was to marry a Persian prince. They traveled by sea and hundreds died on the ship. They visited Persia, where they left the princess and learned that Khan had died. In 1295, they finally arrived in Venice. Abu Daya Muhammad ibn Abdullah al-Lawati al-Tanjin ibn Battuta was born in 1304 in Morocco's northern port of Tangier. Wise beyond his years, at an early age he shortened his name to Ibn Battuta, thereby ensuring that he would not have gone down in history as Abu What's-his-name, the greatest traveler who ever lived. But make no mistake, Ibn Battuta was indeed the greatest traveler to ever walk the earth. In an era when precious few possessed the means, the time, or the courage to submit curiosity and venture off the map's edge, Ibn Battuta set out to complete Islam's traditional pilgrimage to Mecca and ultimately spent the better part of his life wandering. In nearly 30 years on the road, Ibn Battuta traversed North Africa, Egypt, and the Swahili coast, reached Mecca on the Arabian Peninsula, passing through Palestine and Greater Syria en route, swung through Anatolia and Persia to Afghanistan, crossed the Himalayas to India, then Sri Lanka and the Maldives. He reached the eastern coast of China before turning around and zigzagging all the way back to Morocco. Ibn Battuta was also proficient in geography, botany, Islamic theology, and possessed a social scientist's shrewd capacities of observation. But the primary reason Ibn Battuta lives on today was his writing. Ibn Battuta established a science which would eventually become the art of travel writing. Along his journey, he recorded copious observations, notes, insights, and lessons, preserved by a young scribe who, at the request of Marco's Sultan, spent many months transcribing Ibn Battuta's story, ultimately compiling Al-Rihla, or the Travels.